We'd like to welcome everyone to our afternoon program. Michelle with Megan Dayton is being featured, and she's going to introduce our speaker. We're so glad that you have come, and we're so glad you could use this facility. So I'm going to introduce Michelle. I think you all know Michelle. Most of you, maybe not. Okay, come on up, Michelle. Hello. Thanks for coming today. We have Dr. Ruth Heidrich. She's an inspiration to many. I don't know if some of you have seen the movie Forks Over Knives. She's featured in that movie. She's been a long time athlete and vegan and promoter of good health. So she's going to tell us some great stories and hopefully inspire us all today to make better life choices. There is free food. This was provided by Earth Fair Date, and they're a new grocery store, health food store in Centerville, near 675 of the Cross Point Center. We also have a few donations from Ghost Light Coffee Shop down on Lane in the South Park District of Dayton. We have water, hot tea, some coffee for those who need their coffee. Green tea, snacks, help yourself. There's ice down the floor. But we're happy to have Dr. Ruth talk to us today, and I'm going to welcome her now.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Bev. And especially thank all of you for coming. I did go for a nice run this morning, which really helped because, in fact, I say in my books that exercise is the best thing you can do. Okay, let me start with looking at you all in the dark. Yeah. Okay. I figure maybe about half of you are already vegan and you're right on spot and you're here just to support the speaker. And the other half of you are here because somebody dragged you along and said, listen, you got to get the message. So I'm going to talk kind of halfway in between. So those of you who are already vegan thought, oh yeah, I know. But I also have another message, and that's one of exercise that I think gets neglected. In fact, I have two circles of friends. This circle is my vegan friends, and this circle is my running friends or triathlon friends. Do you know how many overlap? Running vegans? Very, very few. My husband Bob is one of them. I grabbed him because they're so rare. People who get enough exercise and eat the right diet. But how did I get into this? How did this all start? How did I get so smart? I wasn't. In fact, the Air Force had me stationed here at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in the 70s. And I was a runner then. I ran all year round. In fact, in February of 1973, I was going out for a run and somebody said, you can't run in this, your lungs will freeze. And I thought, oh, it was below zero. And I thought, my gosh, that's a possibility. Went to the flight surgeon and asked. He laughed and he said, no. He said, the only people who have to worry about freezing are males with that appendage, and a fur cod piece would take care of that. So I figured if you dressed properly, you could run. So I ran every morning before going to work. So I thought I was pretty fit and healthy. I'd had my first nutrition course back in the olden times, 1952, university nutrition. And this is when we were taught that chicken and fish are the ideal protein, and everybody needs it, that you need dairy to have strong bones. And I took that message to heart and did a lot of chicken and fish and low-fat dairy. So I thought I had it handled, right? The running exercise, and even up to the point of running marathons and eating right. So you might imagine my shock when I felt a lump in my breast right here. In fact, it was here in Dayton when I first felt it. Went to the clinic there on base, and they did a mammogram, and they said, oh, it's just fibrocystic breast disease. So common in women, nothing to worry about. So I didn't worry about it, and the next year, same thing, except I could swear it was a little bigger, but they said, no. The third year, it was so big that I was lying on the exam table, and I looked down, and it was like that, like a golf ball. And I thought, what is going on here? The doctor walks in, my medical records in his arm like this, and he takes one look at me and says, why did you wait so long to come in? So you can imagine my panic, fear, anxiety, worry, anger. I'd been in it the previous 3 years. And that was, and the reason I'm telling you this is lesson number 1. There is one person responsible for your health. That's you. Go to doctors, get educated, and make sure you know you're on the right track. What's the challenge is nobody knows all the answers. We're still learning so many things about nutrition. We know there are healthy vegans and unhealthy vegans, and vegetarians, and have it partly right. They're working at it. So anyway, I had the surgery, and they took out the lump. I watched the surgery, by the way. That was when I first started taking charge. Told the doctor, the surgeon, I want to watch what's going on. He said, oh no, you don't. It's too bloody. We're going to put you out. And I said, no, I want to watch. He said, are you sure? You think you can take it? And I said, I want to see what that thing looks like. So when they took it out, he took this wide margin trying to get it all, and found out the next day that there were no clear margins. You know what that means? No clear margins means it had spread beyond the breast. It had actually spread to my bones. My liver enzymes were sky high. And I also had a tumor in my lung right there. I was about to start chemo and radiation when I happened to see a notice in a local newspaper. I was in Hawaii by this time, by the way. 1979, I had been transferred to Hickam Air Force Base. And saw this notice. It was a little 3-line ad, said, wanted women with breast cancer to participate in diet research study. It's called Dr. John McDougall. How many here have ever heard of Don? So yeah, okay. John McDougall. I met him in 1982. That was when this was all happening. Ran to the phone and got right through to him. Does that ever happen? You call a doctor's office and you get to speak to him right away? Well, this was Dr. McDougall. He said, get your medical records and come down to my office. I need to talk to you. So that was my introduction to veganism, not vegetarianism. I said, what about dairy? What about my bones? He laughed and he said, first of all, he said, with your running, you aren't going to have to worry about strong bones. And with leafy greens, which you're going to start eating a lot of, that supplies all the calcium your body needs. So I listened to him and walked out of that office 2 hours later, a committed vegan. And that was my introduction. And I was doing it primarily for the breast cancer. Went back to the oncologist and said, I'm not doing chemo and radiation. He said, you're crazy. This is ridiculous. Diet has, I love this, diet has nothing to do with breast cancer. He confirmed this over and over again. It's not your diet. That's not why you got breast cancer. Well, why did I get breast cancer? Well, we don't know. We don't. Oh, gosh. Anyway, I also found out that I had a high cholesterol, 236, that's high. And Dr. McDougall told me, you are at as high a risk of dying of a heart attack as you are at the breast cancer. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm a marathoner. He said, doesn't matter. It's your cholesterol means your arteries are clogging from the saturated fat and cholesterol from the animals that you're eating. He said, don't worry. He said, when you change your diet, your cholesterol is going to go right down to where it needs to. And 17 days later, I had the second blood test, and it had gone from 236 down to 160 in that short a time, which doctors today I've heard say that can't happen that fast, without meds even. And the next test was another 6 weeks later and was down to 120. So it bounces around in that area. So my risk of heart disease is practically zero. My breast cancer, it's been 30 years now, so that risk of recurrence really is quite low. But I also had a high risk of colon cancer and diverticulitis and all kinds of other problems that occur down there because I had been constipated all my life and didn't know it. Doctors had told me, well, going 3 or 4 times a week is normal for some people and you're one of those. Well, the next day after I changed my diet, I found out what normal was. And what a relief. I thought, oh, why didn't somebody tell me this a long time ago? It has made such a difference. And this was before my grandmother died of colon cancer. So to the extent that genetics plays a role, this would have been probably, if the breast cancer and a heart attack hadn't gotten me, there was colon cancer laying in wait, and it will get you. So I've avoided all those bullets. My acne, I was one of those that had adult acne. I did all the scrubbing and all the everything you're supposed to do to try to get rid of acne, and nothing worked until I went vegan. That disappeared. I had to use Selsun for my dandruff, just to keep that under control. Anybody know what Selsun is? You know, dandruff control. And when I changed my diet, that disappeared. And I thought, how come all these good things happen when you change your diet and nobody's talking about it? Well, that was 1982 again. And the word is slowly getting around, too slowly. So anyway, that is, the rest of the story is how the reason I'm wearing this ratty old t-shirt, you see this, and the date on it is 1984. And I earned this. I'll tell you, it took me 14 hours of hard work to earn this t-shirt, so I wear it very proudly. It's one of 6 Ironman t-shirts that I have. And, they always bring back that great memory of how I got into more than running. I had not recovered from the surgery yet, and again, back in Hawaii, this is where the Ironman started, if any of you know anything about the history of the Ironman. And it had started in my neighborhood. So I knew that there was the Waikiki Rough Water Swim, 2.4 miles, right off, 2 miles from where I lived, and the 112 miles was around the island of Oahu, and the Honolulu Marathon, which I had run at that point 3 times. So when I was watching television, I happened to see the first one that the ABC Wide World of Sports had shown. And I watched that and I thought, wow, that looks like so much fun. I'm gonna do that. And then it hit me, lady, you're 47 years old. Yeah, 47 at the time. And that's, look, these are all youngsters. They're all in their 20s and look at their fit bodies. And I thought, well, I'm not too bad a shape for age 47, and I know how to swim, I know how to bike, the running is easy enough, so I started training to do the Ironman, and I found out at that one point I would have been the oldest woman to have ever done an Ironman. Of course now, there are lots of them, but for a few minutes maybe I was the oldest one. I was the first cancer patient to do the Ironman. So the main reason for doing it, other than the draw, the fact that it looked like a lot of fun, was I needed to show people that the vegan diet was not for wimps, that it made you strong, powerful, gave you all kinds of energy. And one of the most important things I found out was recovery. If you run a marathon or even a 10K with people who aren't vegan, usually the next day they're kind of tired or they're sore. And I've seen this over and over again. I recover so quickly, I want to do things and I can't get anybody to do them with me. I did the Japan Ironman, got a first in my age group, and had been so focused. I was there for 2 weeks. So focused the first week on the training, looking at the venue so I didn't get lost and figuring out what equipment on my bike and where I was going to swim, Lake Biwa and all that. So totally focused on the Ironman. The next day after it was done, I said, okay, now it's time to look at Japan. And we were close to Nara Park. It's at the ancient capital of Japan near Kyoto. And I wanted to do some tourist things. So I'm talking to, in Japan, most people don't speak any English, and I wanted to get some of my English-speaking friends to go with me. They were so sore. The stairs are going like this, and or walking backwards downstairs, and they looked at me like I'm crazy. Go for a tourist train, checking out the local terrain. I had to go by myself. And what was so funny, I'm getting a little sidetracked here, but I got on the bus to take me to Deer Park, Nara, and it's full of Japanese, of course, and looking at the scenery, and it was about an hour's ride. There's a newspaper folded up in the pocket in the seat in front of me, and it's all in Japanese, and I thought, I can't read that. I thought, the Ironman's yesterday. There might be a picture of the Ironman, something in there. And so I opened it up, because I figured, the winner, first place male would be there, first Japanese finisher would be there. I open it up, and guess who? It's me, my picture, and I go, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. And of course, all these Japanese people are looking at me like I'm crazy, and I pointed, and the Japanese man right across the aisle said, I'm an English professor at Kyoto University. I said, thank goodness. I said, I just did the Ironman yesterday, and this is my picture. And he looked at it. He stood up and read in Japanese the whole story. And so I'm thinking, I'm in a movie. This cannot be happening. This is just too unbelievable. And I still, to this day, think, that newspaper and by myself and a Kyoto professor, I couldn't have made this stuff up. So. That was kind of the launching of my getting into both the diet and the exercise. Well, after that first Ironman, which was 84, Dr. McDougall said, you've got to write a book. I tell these women how to prevent breast cancer. They don't listen to me, or they come one time and I never see them again. He said, you got to tell your story. And this was probably, by this time, maybe 4 or 5 years, and I was really doing well on the diet. I loved it. I loved talking about it and trying to get people to follow trying to educate physicians. Forget it, What they learn in med school is sacrosanct. You don't tell them anything different. There's a new breed coming, but unfortunately they're pretty rare. So anyway, Dr. McDougall said, have you started that book yet? I said, no. I kept thinking, who's going to want to read a book that I would write? I just thought, authors are way up there with doctors. Nobody would read a book that I'd write. But he kept after me. He said, you have got to write a book. So I started thinking about it. In fact, he's the one that got the software. Back in the 80s, there wasn't much, and there wasn't Word yet, or maybe Word Perfect or any of these, but he got me some software, and he said, start writing. In fact, he called me the next morning. Have you written anything yet? And so I owe a lot of credit to Dr. McDougall, not just saving my life, but also getting me started writing my story. So I got A Race for Life, and I love that title because it's on several levels. We're all in a race for life, whether you realize it or not. You may not be out on a track, but you're taking care of your health, hopefully, and it's who's going to get there first with the longest. We all want to live nice, long, healthy lives. And I want to race for life, for the rest of my life. I have pictures of being 100 years old and still a lot slower, but still running races. And then I run for life. It gives me vitality. I mentioned earlier being jet lagged and sleepless, but I went out for an hour's run this morning, and it did help. It made me feel almost back to normal again. So that was my first book. And then when I turned 70, I got a call from the publisher, Martin Rowe. He said, you know, you've been running for how many years now, and you've been vegan for how many years? We need a book for seniors. How about writing senior fitness? And I'm thinking, another book? That's a lot of work, because A Race for Life really was. So I thought about it and thought, yeah, these people need to know it's not just cancer, it's also heart disease. And some of the talks I was giving, I'd cover the top 10 drugs that people use, most of them totally unnecessary. The top 10 killers of Americans, totally preventable. So that's what senior fitness is, how to get rid of these. And I throw in things like dementia. It's become more and more of an issue as I've aged. And I've seen not just peers, but just reading about how dementia is becoming so common, that Alzheimer's, and nobody knows what causes Alzheimer's, but I have a theory. You know, it's clogging of the arteries to the brain, just like you clog all the other arteries and you get things like ED, you know what that is? Yeah, clogs arteries to the genitalia, to the toes, to the ears, to everything. So it's a whole body reason to eat a good, healthy diet. So that's pretty much what I've learned. Oh, then there's another book. Actually, I haven't told you about Chef yet. Chef was my first cookbook, because after talks with people say, well, what about yogurt? What's wrong with yogurt? What's wrong with fish? You know, oh, I need to explain, to help educate so they understand. What's wrong with olive oil? What's wrong with canola oil? What's wrong with a lot of nuts and seeds? So I thought, I have got to write a cookbook. So I wrote Chef, which is an acronym for cheap, healthy, easy, and fat-free. And I talk about how I don't want to spend any time in the kitchen. So that was the main reason for going raw, because I don't like to cook. And I found out you don't have to cook. You can eat plants out of the ground raw. And if they're out of the ground, you get B12 at the same time, but most people don't do that, so I recommend a B12 supplement. So it's, where was I going with this? Chef. Oh, and then my publisher called me about 2 months ago, and he said, oh, let me give you a little background. Martin he was my editor and going through all my books, was not a runner. And apparently he'd read enough about the advantages that he decided to try it. Well, he just ran his 3rd New York City marathon. And so I get this call one day, and he says, Martin, here, you know, you've been running 42 years now. We need a book for running for seniors. And I thought, oh, do I really want to do this again? And I told him I'd think about it. Well, as soon as I hung up the phone, I'm thinking, well, you can tell him this, and this, and this, and this, and got all these ideas. So I'm in the middle of another book on, it's the working title, the one I like, is Lifelong Running. I don't want it running for seniors, because too many people think I'm not a senior. You know, they may be 55 and thinking that's for the really old people. So I'm wrapped up in that. I'm having a lot of fun writing it, because when I go out for a run, I really sometimes get blissed out. I'm looking at nature, the trees, and our trails, running by the ocean. This morning, running by the Miami River. I'm having so much fun, and the rewards are so great afterwards. The greater, the endorphins are flowing, and I'm excited and thinking, wow, this is really fun, and why doesn't everybody do it? So that's brought me to where I am today, and I'm still trying to spread the message to everybody. So in terms of the second part of my talk, instead of how I know, what is the right diet and the right exercise? Well, if you're already vegan, you already know it's plant foods in as close to their raw, natural state as possible. I think there's some debate as to what cooking does to proteins, you know, that denatures protein, and is that harmful? I don't know. I just would rather not cook at all. And I know we get plenty of protein from leafy greens and fruits. Even every plant food has protein in it. So there's this great myth that you need a lot of protein. And in fact, most Americans, most Westerners get way too much protein, which leads to osteoporosis, kidney disease, and probably a lot more we haven't discovered yet. And in terms of calcium for bones, do you know how many women get their first bone density test and are told you need to go on Fosamax or Boniva or one of these drugs because your bones are weak? I've got a whole chapter in senior fitness that there's so many fallacies. Number one, measurement. The tests are not valid, they're not reliable. If you've ever had a statistics course, the first principle they teach you in testing, it's got to be valid. Are you testing what you think you're testing for, and reliable? Can you get the same result over and over again? Well, the DEXA testing, the scanning, is not reliable and it's not valid. There's no correlation between a low score on DEXA testing and fracture rates. And isn't that what you really care about, fracture rates? They're getting men now into DEXA scanning and telling them, oh, you're osteopenia or osteoporosis and we need to put you on these drugs. They tried to get Bob doing the same thing. I could get sued, I guess. It's a racket. Don't tell me. But it's big business, a lot of money in it, not just in the bone building drugs, but in drugs that lower cholesterol. You've seen these ads on TV. If diet and what is it, diet and something doesn't work. Well, yeah, that's right. Yeah, and exercise really doesn't do anything. It may help the HDL, but it will not lower your LDL at all. And as a marathoner, I knew this because I had the high cholesterol. So that the ads, if diet and exercise don't work, you need to go on this statin. And of course, the side effects from statins are just now really being publicized. Oh, the side effects from Fosamax, broken femurs. This femur is the strongest bone in your body. And what they're finding out now, women who have been on Fosamax or any of these drugs for more than 5 years are sometimes just turning around, the femur breaks and they fall. It's not impact, it's not anything they did, it's the drug that's causing this problem. And in fact, I'm now seeing ads from attorneys. If you've had a femur fracture, or someone in your family, a loved one, a fracture of the femur, and they were on these drugs, come see us. We're going to sue. And so that really is that direction where that's going. So let me see. If you've got any questions as I go along in terms of diet, I don't want to go over old ground if you already know all you need to know about a vegan diet, why it's healthy in terms of the two things that come up all the time, is the protein and the calcium issue. B12 comes up, but that's pretty much it. I think people know that spinach is good for you to get your iron. That's another one that comes up. Where do you get your iron? Well, leafy greens are loaded with iron, and it's a lot better than killing a cow to get some beef for iron. And they say, well, it's not as easily absorbed. Well, it is. It's not ever a problem. So in terms of diet, are we all pretty much on the same page? Yes?
I was going to ask you talk about raw food. I mean, I know a lot of raw food books, and a lot of raw foodists I know eat a lot of fat. In fact, some of them eat up to 40–50% fat because they're not eating whole grains. So they fill themselves up with avocados and things like that.
Right.
Obviously don't do that. I was just curious what you do to...
Okay, the question has to do with raw fooders who are not eating grains, so that leaves fruits and vegetables and probably seeds and avocados, foods like that, and you can end up with a 50% calories from fat, which is way too high. My theory is, and this is explained in Chef, and I've got some charts, it shows that if you're eating a wide selection of fruits and vegetables, that you're going to get, on the average, 80% carbohydrates, 10% fat, and 10% protein. The perfect mix. And so that's, of course, no oils. And I don't eat any high-fat foods, so there's no avocado, no olives. So that's how they average out.
So you eat no nuts either?
I didn't for years, no nuts, because Dr. McDougall is a no-nut person. And I started reading more about DHA and EA and the omega-3 fatty acids, and I thought, well, it wouldn't hurt. In fact, it wasn't just my thinking. It was talking to a couple of other, Brenda Davis, who's a registered dietitian, and her books say you really should have some nuts to make sure your omega-3s are high enough. So I throw in a handful of walnuts into my blueberry dessert, and I saw blueberries over there, good for the brain. So the handful of walnuts and the blueberries and prunes are my dessert. So that's where I think most people should go, the 80-10-10. I might say a word about carbohydrates, because Atkins did such a disfavor to so many people, the low-carb diet, as if carb is a nasty 4-letter word. You know, we should avoid carbs at all costs, and the high protein. Well, fortunately, PCRM, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, is working to counter all that, the damage that Atkins has done. Carbohydrates is what our brains run on. Glucose. It's carbohydrates in plant foods, fruit in particular, or as I mentioned, 80% carbohydrates. It gets into your digestive tract and then gets broken down into glucose, which is pure sugar. That another word that's not bad, but people think sugar is bad. But it's glucose, and it gets into the bloodstream. The brain only runs on glucose. It can't metabolize fat or protein. That's why you get fuzzy-headed if you go on a high-carb diet and ketones. And your muscles prefer glucose, which turns into muscle sugar, which is glycogen. That's what keeps you going for these long runs. We have a guest here who just did, was it 50-miler yesterday? 50K. Same thing. Yeah, once you get to that distance. And fueled by glycogen plant foods, right? Yep. And recovered. He's not limping. He walked in straight and is big.
It's a beautiful neighborhood. I should have brought my running clothes.
Yeah. Well, he's got his invisible shoes on. Hold your foot up. Invisible shoes. So yeah, he's part of this new, this nice segue into exercise and how important it is. Yes?
I have a quick nutrition question.
Yeah.
Before you do your next segue, just your thoughts on soy and the different types of soy and processed soy products and
Okay.
tofu versus fermented tofu versus tempeh.
Okay, the question has to do with my thoughts on soy, pro or con, and all about that. I'm not an expert on soy. What happened in 1982 is there were none of these soy isolates around. I think there was soy milk, but walking out of Dr. McDougall's office, I had no use for milk of any kind. So I wasn't looking for a substitute. And as far as soy for protein, I was educated by him to believe that I was getting all the protein I needed from the whole grains, brown rice and baked potatoes and leafy greens and fruits and other vegetables. So there was no need for me to use any soy whatsoever. So again, 1982, and as the years went by, I wasn't looking to expand my dietary regime. I was happy with what I had. Now I keep reading things about soy, how it affects the thyroid and how people eat too much. So I don't eat soy. I've never bought a tub of tofu. I have eaten it. One time I gave a talk at a luncheon in Hawaii, and they knew I was vegan. I was the only vegan there. They brought out a block of tofu. Okay, all right, I'll try it. Wasn't bad. So that was my experience with soy. I know there's soy protein isolates, and that's contrary to the whole food concept. And I really believe we need to not doctor foods, not process them, not refine them, eat a whole food. Well, obviously, you'd have a hard time eating soybeans. I guess edamame, you know, those are okay. I just don't eat them. And in senior fitness, I did make the point, I wanted to address that question because it does come up, that in Japan, they really don't eat that much soy. They eat very little. It's a small percentage of their full diet. So the unhealthy vegans eat a lot of the processed, refined soy products like fake meat, fake chicken, fake bacon, fake all this stuff. When I went vegan, I lost my desire to eat any of these foods. You know, I didn't care if it was fake or not. It just looked like a piece of dead animal on the plate there. So I can't really answer your question as to whether it's good or bad. I just don't do it. Yes.
There's a lot of mixed reviews on coconut products, and I think Google is not a fan of coconut. So
Coconut is the fads keep coming up. You know, the latest superfood. You hear that, you see that on the internet all the time. I don't think you can beat the plain old fruits and vegetables we've been eating for a long time. And the coconut oil, I worry about the coconut fat, the saturated fat that's in coconut. So I don't do certainly not the coconut oil. As far as whole coconut, I guess it'd be okay for a treat once in a while. Especially, I just thought of a recipe. Freeze some bananas and get some of the coconut meat and throw that in a blender and make coconut vanilla ice cream or coconut banana ice cream. That ought to be really good.
Try that so you get the ratios right. Let us know.
Okay. Oh, really?
Too many coconuts around.
Oh. Okay, but I don't know how you could miss even with the wrong ratio.
I think we bought the wrong. I don't think you should use the brown hairy kind. I think you have to use the young kind.
Okay,
Like,
that makes sense.
I think
Yeah,
that was the
young
problem.
coconuts. Yeah. Now, exercise, that's another four-letter word for a lot of people. How do you motivate yourself to get out there and run? Do we have any runners here besides Randy and Rob? And good, okay. I'll rely on you to help spread the word on how much fun it is. The book I'm working on now, running for seniors, I'm saying get them when they're young, this big, because running is the most natural activity. I mean, as soon as we get the walking part handled, we're running. And then you're being told, I go back to when in high school, I was the only girl on the swim team, and I also got my lifeguard license so I could have a part-time job. And the thing I did most as a lifeguard was not saving people. It was blowing my whistle and saying, no running, and all these kids. And what happens, everybody does this to kids. I hear them in school. I run by elementary schools and stop running, you know. And pretty soon the message takes hold and most of us don't run anymore. I think it's a very natural activity. It sure comes in handy if you have to catch a bus, or you can think of all kinds of scenarios when running could save your life. It's cheap. Randy's invisible shoes are how much?
$25, 5,000 mile warranty.
5,000, yeah, $25, 5,000 mile warranty at least, yeah. And they're easy to put on and very lightweight. They get a lot of attention, I'm sure. I'm still in transition. I still, I don't know what it is. I guess it's a lack of confidence that it's going to go, if I'm like 6 miles from home and I get into trouble, trying to imagine walking barefoot. So I'm just gradually expanding the distances that I go from home with my own invisible shoes. And in terms of other exercise, I can't say enough about running, but I will move on because I think swimming is great. And of course, cycling is also very good exercise. I also lift weights. Got tired of going to the gym, so I talked Bob into us getting a home gym so I can do the lat pull downs and the tricep bars and leg lifts and curls everything like that. So 3 times a week I'm in our gym doing weights, which I think is great because, you know, as we age, there's a disease called sarcopenia, and that's where everything starts shrinking, mainly muscles. And to counteract that, you have to do something, otherwise it happens. If you lose weight and lose height, you know that you're probably aging and not doing all you can to fight it or reverse the aging. I get asked, what's the best exercise to do? And the answer I want to say is running, because it's pretty much a whole body. It gives you besides the endorphins, it's good for the heart, it's good for the lungs, it's good for the bones and the muscles and everything else. But the real answer is the best exercise is the one you'll do. Now I know there are a few people who don't like running. Can't imagine why, because I love it so much. But if you can't stand running, you find it boring, or I guess if you had some bodily architecture issues, you know, some people can't run. If you have a false hip or a replaced knee, you probably can't run. Well, I say get in the water. You can run in the water. Well, that's probably boring too. Get on a bicycle, but find an exercise you can do. And the reason I like triathlons, 3 of them, because injuries do happen, accidents happen, and if anything on the upper body, you've got lower body exercise. If anything happens in the lower body, you've got upper body exercise. So you've got to keep going. That's the answer to aging. And that's exercise in a nutshell. Anybody got any questions about exercise? Okay, now I want to go to what I think is kind of the fun part. I did have an idea for my next book before my editor called me, and it was running around the world. And what I love to do, let me back up a little bit. When I was here at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, I was in logistics manager, and we had the air logistics centers all over the US. We were in charge of bases overseas. So I got a lot of what's called TDY, temporary duty. And wherever we went, like in Korea, as soon as we got there, I'd go for a run. And when I went to Alaska, I'd go for a run. And I took my camera and I got some wonderful pictures of the places I'd been. Then I got the idea of having pictures of me running in these places, like Stonehenge in England, running there. Running the Great Wall of China was a thrill. Running the Moscow Marathon was another thrill. I mean, there are just so many exciting things you can do with your running. So that was going to be my next book, Running Around the World. And I've got some pictures that I wanted to show you just because I wanted to share the excitement I feel in running. So this is, I don't know if you recall the Burj Al something. And what? Arab. Yeah, right. The Burj Al Arab. It's they're doing wild things in Dubai. Have you been there? Yeah, it's an incredible place. It's in the desert, and yet they have a ski run, a multi-million-dollar ski run, because the rich people there wanted to ski. So that's in Dubai. And the next one is on Indonesia, Komodo Island. Everybody's heard of Komodo dragons, right? Well, look in the back there. You see 2 Komodo dragons. And they're about 12 feet long, and these are man-eating dragons, literally. When we were there, the caretaker, the ones they feed them chunks of raw meat, had snuck up on him and bit him in the leg, and he was in danger of dying. They had to medevac him out to the hospital because it was really serious. So they warned us, stay away. So you see the others way back there, and that's as close as I dared get to the Komodo dragons. And that was a thrill, seeing something that very few people have ever seen, and that you hear about a Komodo dragon. Anyway, it appealed to me. Okay, next. This was in Vietnam, and that was the biggest darn Buddha I had ever seen. Wow. So you can see other people are also interested in seeing it. It took, I don't know, like 100 steps to get up to that point. So I got up to that, and Bob took that picture of me in front of that Buddha in Vietnam. Okay, next. And this is the same picture. That was taken by a professional photographer. This is a Canadian publication called Senior Living, and I was contacted to do an article on my diet and exercise, and she took that picture, and that's the same picture here, and the same t-shirt, my Ironman t-shirt. And I've also got baseball cards with that same picture. I want to give each of you a baseball card. While I'm diverting just a minute, I want to tell you, one time I was reading a local rag about equal rights in sports for women. And this was a state senator. And what he said was, there are always men on baseball cards. There should be women like Ruth Heidrich on a baseball card. And I'm looking at this and thinking, wow, that's amazing. And I thought, what a great idea. So I started checking around, where do you get baseball cards made? And so I found one, and he's made them. It's kind of a, besides the picture in front, it's got the gee whiz figures, you know, marathons and my books and things like that on there. So again, I want to give each one of you those. And okay, now we can go to Jacob's Ladder. Is anybody, I guess there's a biblical reference to Jacob's Ladder. There's a real Jacob's Ladder. Anybody know where that is? 699 steps straight up. See in the background, there's the town. Jamestown is the capital of the island, and that's where Napoleon is famous for. Napoleon was exiled there. And that was the way they got their supplies. Back in the 1800s, a ship would come into the port there, and they would have to carry the supplies up to the point on top. And so now the thing is, when you get to Jacob's Ladder, to see if you can climb those stairs, 699 of them, and it was fun. It was really a thrill to be able to do that. I love that picture. Okay, next. And this is on board a ship sailing into Oman, Muscat, Oman. Now this is really getting pretty daring because it's a Muslim country. And you know, they frown on women that expose much more than their eyes. So I have this conflict. What am I going to do for a run? Am I going to go in running shorts and singlets like I always do? Or am I going to cover up from head to toe and run? And I kept thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Romans would run in shorts and singlets, so I'm running in shorts and singlet. And I thought, a breakthrough for women, you know? And I'd hope these other women would say, look at that, she can do it, why can't I? I don't know if that ever happened, but that was my fantasy when I was running. Once we pulled into port there, I did go out for a run, and it was amazing. You know, you feel nervous because you know people are really looking, and what are they thinking? Oh, gee, look at that, she's running. Or sacrilegious, you know, the really negative thinking. I had no idea what these thoughts were. Never will know, but I did it anyway. And in the background, see that white thing that looks like a vase? It's a replica of an incense burner, and that thing is big. And so I got to run up to around it and take some closer pictures of that. So that was Oman, that country there, which we did after Dubai. Okay, next one. And this one, it looks like a pretty ordinary picture, but the location is Mozambique. Now, not many people, I don't think, have been to Mozambique. It really they had civil war so bad that it was in ruins. The poor economy, the poor people, the government, they were just opening up to tourism about 3 years ago when we were there, and we were trying to help the economy. They did have these nice gardens, and so that's the representative picture of Mozambique. Okay, next one is, how many know where the Seychelles are? The Seychelles Islands in the Indian Ocean. It's kind of like an Asian Hawaii. It's tropical, nice weather all the time, and it's the people that live there are like local Hawaiians in Hawaii, except they're Seychellians. And I decided that I wanted to do my own triathlon there. So I swam in the ship's pool. I did 100 laps in the pool, got on the stationary bike in the fitness center, and did a 2-hour bike, and then did my run from the ship into the center of town. And that clock marks the exact center of the Seychelles Islands. So that's one of the most unique triathlons I've ever done, the most fun I had, especially talking about it afterwards. I did a triathlon in the Seychelles. You know, people, where's that? Okay, it was fun. Okay, next. That's it. Okay, so I do have a lot more pictures. What I'm trying to do, my bucket list, you know, is going to all these different places. I mentioned Stonehenge. That was a lot of fun. Oh, in Athens, shortly after the Olympics were there, they did the original Olympic course for the marathon. And I got there and wanted to do the same thing. Well, it ended in the Olympic Stadium. But when I got there, it was early in the morning, it was closed. But I wasn't going to let that stop me. The fence was only this high. So I stepped over. I got somebody to take a picture of me. I said, okay, I want a picture. I'm going to jump this fence and I'm going to go to the end. And I want some pictures as I'm running towards you. Okay? Okay. So go over the fence and go to the end. And I get about halfway down, and this security guard comes yelling at me in Greek. And I knew he wasn't being very friendly. He was incensed that I had dared encroach upon his territory. So I ran faster, jumped over the fence, and I got my pictures. So I've had some wonderful experiences like that. In fact, the same thing happened in Stonehenge. They have a fence around Stonehenge. You know what the picture is, those big stones that go across. Like, it's amazing how they did that in those times. We still don't know how they did it. And that was one of the things I really wanted to see, and I wanted to run around it. So, and Bob had the camera, and I was getting him I said, I'm going to jump this fence and go there and run, and I want you to get that picture. Well, same thing happened. Scarred. Yes? Well, that's part of the reason I wrote the book, Race for Life, because it showed how I was in that shoe, the same shoe, of eating a meat-centered diet and how to make the changes and the rationale that was used. I tell the McDougall story in there. Well, this is where you get your protein, this is where you get your calcium. I can't think of any specific pointers other, I'm sure all of you can. You know, you're not up here in front, and when you're sitting down, the brain works a lot better, I found out. I get home, I should have said this, I should have said that, I could have. Anyway, as far as pointers, all I say is, you know, the Nike goddess said, just do it. And then if you run into problems, then start asking questions. I don't think there's any substitute for doing it, seeing how it works for you. As I said, for me, the GI tract started working beautifully. I enjoyed the food. It tasted so much better. Everything seemed to start working better. So in terms of pointers, I don't know, does anybody have any? Yeah, lots, go ahead, your hand was first. Yeah, right.
Being in group, they would help me, you know, they would tell me about nutritional yeast and, you know, just how to, 'cause I didn't really know how to cook vegetables or
Yeah.
to get together the recipes.
It is a challenge. There are lots of things that do come up, like I never thought of the French fries because I didn't eat those before anyway. But the internet is wonderful for information. That's how a lot of us know what they're doing and all that. And I think we're just about out of time. I wanted to make sure that I answered. Yes, yeah.
Could you make a comment or two regarding organic versus non-organic?
Organic versus non-organic. You know, in a perfect world, everything would be organic. I see the trend in that direction. I would love to, mine takes me back to, let's go way back to 1941. I was in Hawaii at the time, December 7th, Pearl Harbor. I was there, I was watching the planes dive down, the explosions and the panic, and immediately we had martial law, and our diet got changed. Butter was rationed, everything was rationed, and so everybody was told to grow their own food. Victory gardens, they call them. So that forced, the same thing happened in Norway, by the way, where the Germans took all their animals and they got healthier, you know, till the end of the war when the Germans left and they went back to eating foods and they got sick again. You know, it takes, sometimes people don't learn very well. And same in Hawaii, we had the victory gardens, and that way they don't have to be worry about insecticides. Well, I guess you could too, right? I guess even if you grew your own garden, if you didn't know better, you'd spray them with insecticides. But hopefully you would not use any insecticides. You can use soap and cayenne pepper, all these different things for keeping the, not being willing to share your food with bugs. There are ways, but I would love to see the trend go more towards organic. So, yes.
How do you feel about soy?
Soy, I don't.
And the reason?
I eat whole foods, and it's raw, and so you have to cook soy. And it's something when I mentioned earlier that when I went vegan in 1982, there were none of these soy products available. And I was so happy with what I was eating, the whole fruits and vegetables, that I never looked for soy, you know, especially the isolated soy proteins. So
Protein sources.
fruits and vegetables, the right amount, the perfect amount. So we can talk a little bit more about that later if you wish. Yes.
I was curious about your cancer. You know, like, do they monitor that? And
Oh, yeah.
It's all from your
The breast cancer, the status, I've been passing every test ever since. Within 3 weeks, the hot spots in my bones faded. I watched them, the scanner, watched the hot spots go away. The bone pain, which was so excruciating, none of the pain pills could touch it. I was pacing the floor at 2 in the morning with the bone pain. It was really awful. Within weeks, that had gone away. Nothing, no issue with the bone has come up since. Within a week, the liver enzymes, which were sky high, indicating metastases to the liver, normalized, right back down to normal. And the lung, they've been monitoring that with x-rays, which I hate, you know. But for a while, I was really concerned about it, so I submitted to annual for the first couple of years, and then every 5 years, and now it's every 10 years. And it's encapsulated, has not grown, has not, they didn't want to operate because to get to it, they would have had to split open the chest. And the surgeon said, you know, I don't want to do that to you. It's obvious it's not growing. Let's just monitor it. So that's where I stand. So I think the cancer's gone. Yes?
What does the plant food-based diet do for your estrogen levels?
It normalized, the great question for women. Oh, and I guess men. Men have estrogen, women have more estrogen. And one of the reasons we think that I got breast cancer was because I had too much estrogen from eating all those animal foods. And whether it's a female fish or a female chicken or a female cow, you're getting their estrogens, because they don't just disappear. The estrogen issue, estrogen is a growth promoter, and it's especially your reproductive tissues like breast and uterus are very susceptible to the stimulation of estrogen, and that's why I think we have so much breast cancer in this country, and it's gotten more and more common as we've gone along. It was 1 in 14 when I was diagnosed. It's now 1 in 7, and I've watched it increase in frequency. So estrogen is a good thing in the right quantity, and it's a bad thing when you have too much. And I believe the same applies to testosterone as well, because male animals, male fish, male chickens, and male cows, male pigs, you know, whatever, they have those hormones, and our bodies make the right amount. And if you start messing with the balance of the two, that's when you get into trouble. Let's see, did you have a question? No, there it was.
I've got another question.
Okay.
I found you through the Born to Run book, the Christopher McDougall.
Yeah, yeah.
I found out you lived in my neighborhood when I was a kid, and you've been very helpful to me, so I want to thank you again. But I noticed when I read Senior Fitness that you had beat the Born to Run author to the Copper Canyons by 3 years.
Yeah,
But
right.
I never asked you about your experience with Tarahumara Indians and their diets.
Okay, okay.
I was kind of curious.
Randy's asking about mentioning the book Born to Run. Has anybody else besides he and I read? Meg, yeah, you two have. Anybody else? Born to Run. You good? Did you like it? I loved it. I thought it was a fantastic, not just because I was in it, but because of the subject. Christopher McDougall is a journalist and a runner, and he kept getting running injuries, overuse injuries, one thing after another, and it was not getting any help. So he started doing some research on why he was getting all these injuries. And that's basically what the book is about. We are born to run. As I mentioned earlier, the little kids are always running. So he was trying to figure out why we get injured when we're doing something that's so natural. He went to the Copper Canyons in Mexico, the Tarahumara. These are native people who were chased by the invaders back into the mountains, and they live a very primitive life. They grow their own food, which is basically squash, corn, and beans. So they are, guess what? Vegan. Except once a year they do have a celebration when they're not vegan, but basically their diet is just this. In addition to this, they are called the running people, the Raramuri, which in their language means running people. They run everywhere, they run for distances, and I read about them probably in about 1999, around 2000, and it just intrigued me. They had running games that last for 48 hours and sometimes more. And how can these, and they don't stop, they have to take bathroom breaks, I figured, but anyway, there's no time out for anything, no change of innings or players or anything like that. They go until the last person is standing. And their women do this as well. That I have got to see this. So back in, as you say, 3 years before Christopher McDougall went there, I visited them. There was a language divide. I had trouble talking to them and making them understand that I too was a distance runner and wanted to find out about their diet and their running, and I got a chance to run with them, just short distances, just for the fun of it. But these are people who love to run, and I think we need more of that. And I'm hoping that we don't contaminate them as we have so many of the other primitive, quote unquote, cultures. We've got the Pima Indians, between Arizona, California, and I guess Utah, and the Pimas in Mexico. The difference in the lifestyle between the two is night and day. The ones in the US have pickup trucks, hamburgers, cigarettes, and booze. The ones south of the border have diabetes, thank you, big time diabetes. The ones south of the border are slim, healthy, no diabetes, and they run everywhere or walk, and they eat basically a good diet. What a study in contrast. And nobody can say, well, it's the genes that make the difference, because they have the same genes. So that's another example, the Pima Indians, the Tarahumara, and there are more. Healthy at 100. John Robbins wrote this book. Some of you might be familiar. Do I see any nods? Yeah. Healthy at 100. He studies basically 4 cultures and finds that they're pretty much vegan, and they work hard because these are very basic cultures. They haven't been contaminated, and they live to 100 and they're still very healthy and working hard. So we know there's information out there. How do we get people to apply it? I guess that's our job, trying to educate people, leading by example, whatever, because we're going downhill. I don't know if I'm like Chicken Little, the sky is falling, but I see what's happening to the rainforests, to the factory farms, to the contamination of our environment. There's just so much going on that we've got to try to stem the tide, turn it around, and start getting healthier. Driving out here, Michelle brought me out, and I'm looking at this great big new hospital and thinking, you know, the way we're going, you better live close to a new hospital because you're gonna need it. Most of the ER visits are people with heart attacks and accidents. Would you say, well, an accident isn't diet related? Yes, it is, because your reflexes slow down, and if you're eating the wrong foods, you're more prone to any kind of an accident. But most of the people in the ER are there because they did it to themselves. So I want to thank you all for coming. We've got some nice. Oh, sorry. What?
I had a
Oh.
question.
Oh, it's you.
After
Okay.
your recovery from cancer,
Yeah.
and the fact that you did not take chemo or radiation,
Right.
did it change your doctor's viewpoint? Did it change the doctors that treated you?
Her question was, because I didn't have chemo and radiation, did it change the doctors? And the answer is no. I'm an anomaly. Spontaneous regression. It didn't change anything at all. And by the way, he is dead. He died at age 45 of a heart attack. Yeah, and that was probably 15 years ago that he died. You know, young age, oncologists should have been helping people. But so, again, thank you so much for coming. I'm going to be up here to answer more questions. Thank you. Thank you.